Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final Steelers stream before the NFL draft on the Black and Gold Breakdown. A lot of news coming out about the Pittsburgh Steelers here in the last hour or so. Todd McShay put out a long tweet about what he's hearing for the top 10 teams in terms of their draft plans. And then at the end of that, he threw in that there were several teams trying to trade into the top 10, one of those being the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if that is the case, what would they be trying to move up for? Maybe a receiver. So, I mean, if they could jump all the way up to number 4 and trade with the Arizona Cardinals and maybe try to get Marvin Harrison Jr., wouldn't that be something? Or, it could be trying to orchestrate a trade with maybe the Chicago Bears to move into the number 9 spot. Chicago's actively trying to move down because they don't have a ton of picks in this draft. I think they only have 4 picks in this draft. So that's a team that they could be trying to give calls to and see if they can move up. But the Pittsburgh Steelers actively trying to move into the top 10, according to both Todd McShay and I believe Ian Rappaport was also on NFL Network talking about Pittsburgh as a team that is trying to move up. So Steelers are open for business. In terms of them moving up, obviously depends on who they would get if they would move up, on how I'd feel about it. But on the surface, I would much rather them try to move back. There's going to be plenty of teams under them who will likely try to move up, especially if there's, a quality receiver still sitting there at 20. If you're a team like the Buffalo Bills and you haven't made a move yet and you're still sitting at 28, that's a team that I would watch as a Steelers fan and as Omar Khan as a team that could probably move up from 28 to 20 to try to get, a Brian Thomas or Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, one of those guys who will probably still be there at 20. A team like Houston who could trade back into the first round. They traded out of the first round earlier this offseason with the Vikings. So that's a team to watch for if they would want to move up for a cornerback because they need somebody else opposite, of Derek Stingley. Former Steeler Steven Nelson was there last year, but he's a free agent. So I would much rather them be trying to move down on the surface, of course. And again, is there a world where they could be potentially trying to make a ginormous splash, trade with Arizona, and maybe get Marvin Harrison Jr.? If that's the plan, go all in. Do it. Absolutely. That would be very fun. If they're trying to move up to around the number 9 spot or the number 8 spot with Atlanta, number 9 with Chicago to try to get Rome Odunze, cool. Do that too. On the surface, though, just thinking about it, like if it's for a lineman, this is going to sound so just like Gen Z of me, just stay put. Stay put. There are going to be plenty of options at 20. Now, Mel Kiper Jr. wrote in his final predictions piece that the Steelers are going to take Graham Barton and that they might try to move up a few spots to secure him. So if they try to orchestrate something with Seattle, who's sitting at 16, okay, it probably won't take too much to make that happen. But if you're going to take a lineman, just sit there at 20 because there's still going to be plenty of quality linemen there at 20. So I don't necessarily see moving up for a lineman. If they move up, it's for a pass catcher. It's for a receiver. That's just my guess. We have a comment real quick. I'll bring Spice Creations. Don't want to move back, and I don't think the Steelers do either. I think it makes sense to move back just to gain as much capital as you can. In terms of, like, if they move back with Buffalo, the Bills have an additional 4th-round pick. They could probably get, a 3rd-round pick out of them if they were to move back. So my thing there is, if you move back, you get to 28, you get an additional day 2 pick, let's say. Then you can bundle that and try to move up for somebody else. So gain some more resources and try to move up in the 2nd round, maybe to try to get, a Zach Frazier if he's still on the board. If you can get a receiver that you like at 28, or if you can get an offensive tackle that you like at 28, cool. Then try to bundle something else and try to get, either a receiver that you really like or a center that you really like. I think that moving down makes sense to me. Now, again, if they're trying to trade up for a pass catcher, so if they're trying to trade up for Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, God save the Queen, Marvin Harrison, then absolutely go all in and do it. I'm totally on board with that. And again, remember, there's still a world where, they stay put and take a lineman, they move up a couple spots and take a lineman, which could still very well happen. And if that is the case, then Cortland Sutton's still on the table. Brandon Ayuk would still be on the table, although there are teams in the top 10 that the 49ers are currently reaching out to about trying to move up from 31 to the top 10. A deal like that would likely include Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, which is being reported by, I want to say, Adam Schefter. I'd have to pull it back up. But Diana Rossini has also been very active, saying that the Bears are trying to move down from 9. 49ers are trying to move up from 31 into the top 10. So if the 49ers are trying to move up into the top 10, that means they're pretty content or pretty aware that they're not going to be bringing back Brandon Ayuk. He's going to be involved in a trade. And if you're a team like the Bears, if you're a team like the Falcons, go all in, man. That would be fun. I'd have to see what their cap situation looks like, but I think they could do it. Sitting at number 8, just go full balls to the wall and try to get just the most explosive offense that you can and trade for Brandon Ayuk. Do it. Then you got Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Brandon Ayuk, and Kirk Cousins distributing the ball with a good defense. That's a team that could make a run at the NFC Championship. I would like that a lot. In terms of the Steelers, though, if they are trying to trade into the top 10, I think it's for a pass catcher. Because, again, if you stay put at 20, you're going to have your choice of guys that you want. So whether that be Graham Barton, who I think would still be there, Amarius Mims, who would likely still be there. If they move up and take like Troy Fautanu, I'm going to be a little annoyed just because, like, if you want a lineman, stay put. Just stay there and you'll get one. I don't love the idea of trading up for a lineman. They did it last year with Broderick Jones, and that was fine because he obviously panned out to be really good. But in this draft class, where it's an incredibly deep class and you can stay put and get somebody, I would much prefer them stay put if they're just going to take a lineman. Or go all in and try to get, an Ayuk, as we've talked about plenty before. But now there's a world where they trade up and try to get Malik Neighbors or Odunze or the very slim chance that it's Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm going to hold on to that until, we see him go off the board. But there is a world where that could happen. I'm going to keep opening Twitter, though, just because we, something does happen while we're actively talking about this. I would like to at least know about it. But if there's a world where they do move up into the top 10, I'm trying to think who it would be with. Arizona at 4 is obviously open for business. There's reports from Schefter saying that Monty Austin-Fort and the Cardinals were going to be actively taking calls. And if anybody's been working the phones, it's been Omar Khan. So I would bet that there have been calls made from Omar Khan to Marvin Harrison, or not Marvin Harrison, to the Cardinals from Omar Khan to try to move up and get Marvin Harrison. Because, of course, you would make that call. So that's something to monitor going forward. Sorry, my nose itched. By the way, I'm exhausted right now. I'm about to walk down to 7-Eleven and get myself a Red Bull before this starts because I've had 2 coffees today, and I'm just, my eyes look a little bit saggy. I don't know why I'm so tired. But I got to be awake because I got a lot to write tonight. By the way, follow all my work, USA Today, SB Nation. A lot of recaps coming for draft coverage, a lot of Steelers coverage at Behind the Steel Curtain. So if you could please go follow. The staff has been tremendous for Behind the Steel Curtain. Our staff has really been putting together a lot of quality work, and we're going to be very busy tonight and over the next few days. So follow everybody and all the stuff that we're doing there. So if they do trade to number 4 for Marvin Harrison, it's on the table. You got to look as well at what the Cardinals already have draft-wise. They already have a ton of picks in the first 100 picks. Actually, let me pull up what they have because it's a ton, especially in the first 50 picks. I think they have 4 picks in the first 50. So that's something to monitor as to, from the Cardinals' perspective, as like, okay, but why would we move from 4 to 20 when we already have a ton of picks? So that's why I would be a little bit hesitant thinking that they would trade down from 4 to 20 because they already have so much. I hate this. Let me just pull up the mock draft simulator, and then we'll see what the Cardinals all have, because it is a lot. It is a ton. But even if it's not the Cardinals, let's say it's with the Bears at number 9 to get Odunze. Cool. Absolutely do it. Joseph asked, why would we get why wouldn't you get Marvin Harrison? If you can get Marvin Harrison, get Marvin Harrison. Harrison is probably the most touted wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson. And obviously there's no such thing as, a can't miss guy, but he's as close to a can't miss as you can get at that position. And for a guy who would have been a top 5 pick had he come out last year, if you could get Marvin Harrison, get Marvin Harrison. That's your franchise wide receiver there. And if you can have Marvin Harrison and George Pickens, you do that. Absolutely. All day, every day. I don't care what it takes to do it. You do it. So that's just my line of thinking for it. And I think that the Steelers would be very okay with that as well. So in terms of the Cardinals, so they have picks 4, 27, 35, 66, 71, and 90. So that's 6 picks in the top 100 already. And then after that, they have pick 104. So 7 picks in the top 105. They have a ton of draft capital already. So I think the Cardinals would have to be really blown away. And I think if it is the Cardinals, oh, Lord, I'm just thinking about this now. What if, and we've seen interdivisional trades before, if the Cardinals get Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers, as well as pick 31, and then the 49ers take Marvin Harrison, that would be absolutely insane. Because then you have a situation where the 49ers are playing Brandon Ayuk twice a year, and then the Cardinals are going to be facing Marvin Harrison twice a year, a guy that they could have drafted. So that would be something. I don't think if you're the Cardinals, you really make that trade just because you can get Marvin Harrison for cheap. But, just, throwing that out there. Who else is there? The Chargers at number 5. I mean, if you can stay put as the Chargers and get Malik Neighbors, you do it. They don't have any receivers right now. They got Quentin Johnson, who's not good. I think Josh Palmer is still, they need receivers. So if you're the Chargers, you stay put. I don't think a trade with the Chargers would make too much sense. But the Chargers are also a poorly run organization. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers were able to trade up to 5. At 6, who's drafting at 6? I honestly forget. At 6, the Giants are at 6. I think the Giants are going to stay put, try to get either a receiver, or if one of the quarterbacks falls to them and they really like them, they take a quarterback. The Titans are a team that could be had at number 7. They need offensive line. This is a very deep offensive line class. They could trade back to 20, still get a tackle. Joe Alt would be probably their pick if he's sitting there at 7. Really the best tackle in this class. But again, if you're the Steelers trying to move into the top 10, Tennessee's a team to watch for because they don't need a quarterback. At least that's, regardless of how you feel about Will Levis, they aren't going to take a quarterback is probably a better way of saying that. Same with Atlanta, man. Atlanta would probably be the team to take the first defender in this draft at number 8. But you can go back to 28 and still get somebody like a Chop Robinson. And again, I'm not too huge on like a Dallas Turner, and I think that taking him at 8 would be a reach. Like if you can get Rome Odunze there, or if Malik Neighbors falls there, you take him over Dallas Turner 10 times out of 10. So if I'm Atlanta and I'm really just keyed in on taking a defender, I would trade back, especially if it means getting a ton of picks in the process. If I can get a haul of picks as well as still get an edge rusher at 28, I would do it. And then at 9, as we already talked about with the Chicago Bears, I think 7, 8, and 9, if the Steelers do make a trade, that's where it would be. Either with Tennessee, Atlanta, or Chicago in order to secure one of these receivers. Because again, if they're trading into the top 10, I don't think it's for an offensive lineman because they can just stay put at 20 and do that. If they get into the top 10, it's for Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. Or, God willing, they somehow pull off a trade with the Cardinals and secure the rights for Marvin Harrison. That would be absurd. But we'll see. I think that best case scenario, they'd probably just stay put. I don't see them trading up. Again, trading up doesn't make sense to me because you're going to have to give up one of your top 100 picks, which you could use to try and assess something else because we know that they need a center. That's absolutely something that they have to address. We know that they're probably going to take a tackle at some point because if they want to move Broderick Jones to left tackle, you got to have somebody to play right tackle. Or even if they decide to keep Broderick Jones at right tackle, Dan Moore's not good. They need to add depth to the secondary because cornerback-wise right now, it's Joey Porter, it's Dante Jackson, and then it's Corey Trice and Darius Rush. Corey Trice is still basically a rookie. Darius Rush got some playing time last year, but it's still a very, very young secondary. Joey Porter's obviously great. Dante Jackson's a veteran. Everybody else behind them, there's nothing there. So they got to add to the secondary. Got to add some defensive line depth. So there's some stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they got to address. And obviously in free agency after the draft, I talked about it yesterday. I could see them adding someone like a K'Wan Williams at nickel after the draft is done, just to add another veteran presence in there. But again, this is a young secondary, and they need pieces there. So trading up, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me unless you really are keyed in on a veteran quarterback that's still on the market and you feel okay about it. But if they do trade up, I don't think it's for an offensive lineman. I think if you're moving into the top 10, you're doing that to get a receiver. And whether that's Odunze, Neighbors, I think it'll be one of those two. But again, plenty of teams are active right now. San Francisco is taking calls and trying to move into the top 10. And if that does happen, then that is all but guaranteed to include a Brandon Ayuk in a trade or a Deebo Samuel in a trade. I would say with as close to certainty as you can get that one of Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel will not be a San Francisco 49er by week 1. So if they're going to get moved, now is the time where it's going to happen. It is on draft night. And if you're a team again, I think Atlanta at 8 is a team that's going to get a ton of calls because if they're going to be trying to take a defender, you don't need to take one at 8. That's kind of a reach. You can move down, get a haul of draft picks, potentially get a Brandon Ayuk or a Deebo Samuel, and still get somebody with high value at that position. And Chicago doesn't have a lot of draft picks. That's the thing with Chicago. So here, let me pull it up real quick. So the Bears in this draft have 4 picks. They have the number 1 overall pick, the number 9 pick, pick 75, and pick 122. That is all that they have. So they're trying to move down from 9 in order to gain some more draft capital. So if you're the Steelers and trying to trade into the top 10, that's probably your best option right there for a team that only has 4 picks. If the Steelers were to offer pick 20 and pick 119 to move to number 9, I think that deal gets done. And maybe both of their 7ths next year. You'd have to throw, some other garbage pick in there. But pick 20 and pick 119, I think that gets them to number 9. And if one of those receivers is sitting there, guess what? George Pickens has a perimeter friend. Whether it be Odunze, whether it be Neighbors. Now, I think that there's going to be plenty of other teams calling. The Buffalo Bills, who we've talked about a lot on this channel as of late. And by the way, you know how much of a Josh Allen fan I am. If you followed my content for any amount of time, I would love for the Bills to get somebody for Josh Allen. So I would say if the Bills are serious about moving up, they could be calling Chicago at 9 and saying, hey, we'll give you pick 28. We'll give you a 3rd round pick. We'll give you one of our 4th round picks. What do you say? Because remember, the Bills have 2 4th round picks and they have 3 5th round picks in this draft. They have a ton. They have 11 picks in this draft. They have a ton of capital that they could just dump off to the Bears. But take all of it. We need Rome Odunze. And Buffalo's a team that doesn't really need a ton of draft picks because they don't have a lot of holes. Receiver is by far their biggest hole. Everything else on defense, they got 2 solid starting corners in Roswell Douglas and Christian Benford. They got a really good nickel in Taron Johnson. Safety-wise, they need to add help, but you're not going to do that in the 1st round. So trading away your picks later on to do it isn't all that big a deal. There's still veteran safeties on the market that they can go out and get. Really, all they really need is a receiver, maybe some depth at edge rusher, because they brought back AJ Epinesa, which surprised a lot of people. Most people thought that he was going to leave in free agency. They brought him back. So the Bills don't have a ton of holes. And they got two really good off-ball linebackers in Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. They don't have a lot of holes. Receiver and safety are by far their two biggest holes. And even then, they brought over Mike Edwards from the Chiefs, and they brought back Taylor Rapp. You could do worse. So their biggest hole is receiver. Brandon Beane has shown to be aggressive before in terms of, they traded up to draft Josh Allen. They traded away a bunch of picks to get Stephon Diggs. I think that they're going to be a team that makes a big jump up to get a receiver. Who that receiver may be, don't know. But it's going to be one of those big three. I would be surprised if they don't make a big jump. At minimum, they trade up to get Brian Thomas. I think that that's their floor for the first round. I think they're going to be really aggressive. They have 11 picks in this draft. 11. They're going to move some of those to try to get a receiver for Josh Allen, because right now his receivers are Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel. Oh, God, who else do they have? Those are his top three. And then obviously Kincaid, but they don't have a legitimate perimeter receiver right now. Shakir's more of a slot guy. Curtis Samuel's more of a slot guy. Mac Hollins is not a starting perimeter receiver. They got to get somebody. So that's another team to watch for. But if the Steelers are going to trade up, and again, if you're just joining me, Todd McShay, Ian Rappaport both saying, hey, the Steelers are trying to get into the top 10. They're making some calls. They're doing it for a receiver. I would be very surprised if it's for an offensive lineman, because, again, you could just stay at 20 and get somebody without having to give up anything else. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll put you up here. We'll have a little conversation about it. But, yeah, if I had to guess right now, it's if they do trade up into the top 10, it's for a receiver. It's either they trade into the top 10 for a receiver, they stay put at 20, maybe they trade back. Again, I think that if they do trade back, it's with a team like Buffalo who couldn't trade into the top 10 themselves. And like Brian Thomas is sitting there at 20. The Bills really need a receiver, so they give the Steelers 28 and a third or a fourth to move up. But if the Steelers move up, I'm hopeful that it's not just for a lineman, because you can stay at 20 and get somebody and not have to give up draft capital to do it. I'm not one of these people who's like super like trade up for Troy Fautanu. Just stay there. Stay at 20 and get Graham Barton. Stay at 20 and get Amarius Mims. Stay at 20 and get somebody who's there. I don't see the need to trade up. Hell, if you take Zach Frazier or Jackson Powers Johnson at 20, I'm fine with it. Fine. Get a center. But do not trade up. Do not trade up. Unless it's for a receiver. That's just my personal opinion. So you can stay at 20 and still get a quality lineman. And if you saw that chart that Schefter tweeted out the other day about like hit rates in the first round with picks, centers have a 92% hit rate in the first round over the past like 15 years, I think it was. And offensive tackle were also a very high hit rate. You can stay at 20 and get a good one. Okay, you don't need to move up. Stay at 20. And if you do move up, it better be for one of these receivers, because you can't go into this season with Van Jefferson as your number 2 receiver. Can't do it. Now, of course, they could draft a guy in the second round. But again, I would rather them move up and give up one of their draft picks to get Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, or the small chance that it's Marvin Harrison overtaking, Ricky Pearsall in the second round, or Javon Baker in the third round. Get one of these blue chip guys. And I think that they also feel the fire on their ass for not winning a playoff game in 7 years. And if they do get aggressive and move up, I think it will be for one of these big name receivers. And if they don't and they stay put, then I think it's still very much on the table that they trade for a Courtland Sutton just to have a reliable number 2 guy. If I had to guess right now, I don't think Brandon Ayuk's gonna be acquired by Pittsburgh. I think that it's going to be one of these teams in the top 10 that the 49ers are trying to move up with. So whether that be a Tennessee, who does already have a lot of money tied up in the Calvin Ridley, so I would probably rule them out. It could be Atlanta. If they really just want to go OP, balls to the wall, and build an offense that could get them to a Super Bowl within the next 2 to 3 years, cool. I'm all for it. If it's Chicago, hey, that makes sense to me. You got a ton of money to spend. Make sure you get Caleb Williams as much help as he can get. Bro, if you got a receiving trio of Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen as your top 3 receivers, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I think that those 3 teams are the ones to really watch for. The Chargers could be, again, at 5, just because that's an organization that I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid anymore in terms of like thinking that they'll do the right thing, because since Justin Herbert's been there, they've just consistently done the wrong things. And I understand it's a new GM and Jim Harbaugh's there now, but that's a team that I'm done drinking that Kool-Aid until it's proven that it's safe to do so. So they can move down. Or hell, if they move down if they trade with the 49ers, then okay. You got Brandon Ayuk, but they're also in cap hell themselves. And I don't know what their projected cap looks like next year or what it is right now. I'd have to look that up. But again, they're a team to watch for. But I don't think, Washington's taking a quarterback. I'd be surprised if the Patriots move down and don't take a quarterback. But at the same time, the things that we write in pen ahead of the NFL draft, at least one of those tends to surprise us and go off the rails a little bit. So the Patriots could be that flyer, that wild card that actually decides to move out of number 3. But I think that the biggest targets would be Tennessee, Atlanta, Chicago at picks 7 through 9. I think the Jets would probably stay put. If the 49ers were able to, if the Jets were going to trade with anybody, it would be the 49ers, just because of all the connective tissue there. Robert Saleh and a lot of that staff was with San Francisco, and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. So there's, hey, we'll give you Brandon Ayuk. Make sure you pay it. Brandon Ayuk and Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers. Oh, I better just talk myself into that. That's a fun idea. That would be a situation, man, where it would go really well, or it would just shit would hit the fan. Like it's either, oh my God, the Jets won 12 games, they're one of the favorites in the AFC, or oh God, they won 6 games and Rodgers is on Rogan talking about how there's trace bits of pterodactyl semen and Ritz bits. Like it's one way or the other, man. That is a ship that is either flying or it is sinking. So that would be fun. But the Jets could be a team to watch for in terms of the 49ers. And again, I'm relentlessly just refreshing Twitter here just to see if anything crazy happens. No, Jared, if they stayed put, is Barton or Mims the generational talent they like? Past few days, man, it seems that Barton's the guy. And I'm cool with that. Hey, get a center. Because Ben Roethlisberger was talking about this on a radio spot. You can have guys that help out tackles. The Steelers have 2 really good blocking tight ends right now with Darnell Washington and Michael Pruitt. You can have them stay in and chip and help out the left tackles. You don't really have anybody to help the center. And so if you can get a really good center, and the problem with the Steelers is that it's been one extreme or the other. It's either been Marquise Pouncey, future Hall of Famer there for 10 years, or Kendrick Green and Mason Cole. There hasn't really been an in-between over the past 15 years or so. So if it's Barton, I'm cool with it. If it's Mims, I won't be surprised. But the last week or so, there seems to be a lot of smoke around the Barton stuff. Mel Kiper wrote today that he thinks that the Steelers are going to take Graham Barton. So if that's what he's hearing, he's got more ears in the league than I do for sure. So I lean Graham Barton. And I'm cool with either of them. If they end up taking Mims and then can still get a Zach Frazier, awesome. Sign me up. But if it's Barton, all right, cool. We'll figure out tackle though. Figure out tackle. I hate all these talking heads that talk about the perceived value of center at 20. If you are getting a guy you believe is your starter for 10 plus years, you take him, never look back with Barton. I agree. And again, I referenced the chart that Schefter put out, and it was done by Pahan Bakaitis. The hit rate of different positions in the first round, I think it's over the past 15 or 20 years. Center's like a 92% hit rate. Yeah, If there's a guy there that you know is going to be good, take him, especially if it's a position of need. And center is a position of need. So if they take Jackson Powers Johnson, if they take Graham Barton, if they take Zach Frazier there, I don't care. If he's good, it doesn't matter. So I'm very on board with that. And with the Steelers especially, like they passed on Creed Humphrey to draft Najee Harris, and they passed on him again to draft Pat Freiermuth. And like, no disrespect to either of those guys, but I'd rather have Creed Humphrey than either of them, respectfully speaking. Najee Harris is a fine running back. Pat Freiermuth is a pass-catching tight end who can't really block. I would much rather them have taken Creed Humphrey with one of those two picks over Najee Harris or Pat Freiermuth. And again, I like Najee Harris. I like Pat Freiermuth. The smarter pick would have been Creed Humphrey. So I'd like to think that they've learned from that and they remember what it was like to pass on a center in the first 2 rounds and take one in the 3rd round, and they address it early. And if they take, somebody like a Cedric Van Pran out of Georgia in the 3rd or 4th round, we'll see how it goes. I would expect them to add somebody in free agency. I think Brian Allen's still a free agent from the Rams. That's an avenue that they could go, man. But I'd like to think that they've learned their lesson from the past few years where, okay, we passed on Creed Humphrey, passed on Tyler Linderbaum. Both of them ended up really good. And instead of taking Tyler Linderbaum or Creed Humphrey, they took Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, and Pat Freiermuth. So we'll see. You go with Barton, target Blake Fisher to start at right tackle in the 2nd or 3rd round. Huge upside, very high floor. And like my final mock, not that means anything whatsoever because mock drafts are stupid. I had them taking Fisher, which I'm fine with. If their plan is to really move Broderick Jones to left tackle, then you need somebody at right tackle, and Blake Fisher played right tackle. So I think that that's a move that makes sense to take Blake Fisher. It's not too many like high-end pure right tackles in this draft. So we'll see. Fields might get traded tonight. I don't think that happens, man. I think they're going into this thing with Russ and Fields, and if Russ doesn't look great, then they turn to Fields and say, all right, man, let's see what you got. And then hopefully they can get some sort of extension done in the offseason. I think that they are going to do that regardless, by the way, in terms of, like, they didn't pick up his option, which no one's surprised about because it cost a lot of money to pick that up. I think they can do like a 2-year extension with an out after 2025. I think that's ultimately what will get done, is that they'll extend Justin Fields to a short deal, and that'll be that. But I don't think they're trading Justin Fields. They don't have. I think that would be pretty irresponsible of them as of right now. Again, I think Russ is going to be the week 1 starter. I think Fields will be the starter by the end of the year. That's not to say that I think Russ is going to like be completely horrible, but I do think that there's a situation sort of similar to last year where, the Steelers are still winning games, but the offense just, isn't necessarily clicking to the extent that it could. And they have this 25-year-old guy who's incredibly athletic and has shown time and time again that he can make a ton of plays with his feet, that they're going to say, all right, to hell with it. Let's put him in and see if the offense takes an extra step. I don't think that they're going to trade. I don't think they trade Justin Fields. I think he'll be there. Again, could I be wrong? Sure. I would be very surprised if they did that, though. There's been no such murmurs of that taking place. And again, Fields was very adamant that he wanted to be in Pittsburgh. And so that's a large reason why he's here in the first place, is because the Bears did right by him and sent him to a place that he wanted to go. So I don't think he's getting moved. 5 to 6 quarterbacks before the Steelers pick is going to be the dream scenario tonight. Will allow more of a choice at 20. Yeah, I mean, I hope there's a couple teams that are dumb enough to make 6 quarterbacks go in the top 20. I think Bo Nix is going to be bad. I think Michael Penix is going to be bad. If both of them go in the top 20, that's great for the Steelers. That's tremendous for the Steelers. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to be very good either, but he's going to go in the top 10. So if I had to guess right now, and again, if you follow like me on Twitter, if you follow my content for a long time, I'm not like a giant college football guy. I'm very casual until January when I have to start looking at these dudes and, have opinions for this time of year. I think Drake May is going to be the best quarterback out of the bunch. I think Caleb Williams will be pretty good. The rest of them, I don't know. I think Jaden Daniels, we've seen Jaden Daniels already His name's Justin Fields, except Jaden Daniels is smaller than Justin Fields. I don't think he's going to be good. So I think two of them will be all right. I think Drake May will be in the top, 12 to 13. I'm trying to figure out like a tier in my head, but nothing came to my head. And I think Caleb Williams will be a fine starter. I think that those are the only two that are going to be like really solid guys, going forward. I think the rest of them are going to be, they'll get a year or two, and then they'll be journeyman backups. Noah says JJ is going to be a stud. I don't think so, man. Maybe it's my lazy analysis of just saying that he wasn't asked to do anything in college. I don't see it. It's just my opinion. And not crapping on you. Like, I see you're a Michigan fan. That's fine, man. I could very well be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. I just personally don't see it with him. Like I said, I think two of these quarterbacks will be good. I think it'll be Drake May, who's going to be the best out of this class. I think Caleb Williams will be the second best. I think the rest of them are going to be fine. Not even fine. Why am I saying fine? I think JJ McCarthy's ceiling is being fine. I think that he could be like a Purdy type where if you have everything perfect around him, he could make some plays and whatnot. The rest of these guys, man, I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be good. I don't think Bo Nix is going to be good. And I don't think Michael Penix is going to be good. I think Spencer Rattler and Michael Pratt are going to be better than Nix, than Penix, than Jaden Daniels. I think those guys that are going to be taken like the third, fourth round, I think those guys are going to succeed a few guys that are going to be taken in the first. So we'll see. See Drake, JJ, Caleb, Daniels. Caleb at 3. Yeah, I mean, again, it's possible. Another thing that really irritates me is like, Caleb Williams can be Trevor Lawrence. You know how hard it would be a grand slam for Caleb Williams and the Bears if he's Trevor Lawrence. Like, people have been crapping on Trevor Lawrence too much this offseason, man. That's a whole other conversation. Now, you can go watch my podcast if you want to hear my thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. I did a great show with Tyler Dunn of Go Long a few days ago ahead of the draft, so you can go watch that or listen to it wherever you get your podcast. Listen to the Pump Fake. Give me a review, too. That would be great. But that's a whole other conversation that I'll have on the Pump Fake on here. So we'll see. If you guys have any other Steelers-related questions, drop them in here. Like I said, we still got an hour and a half before the draft. I'll stay on and talk about the trade stuff for a little bit. I'm going to go get a Red Bull at some point to stay awake because I've got a lot of writing ahead of me tonight. And if you want to know where you can follow all the written content behind the steel curtain for SB Nation, where I am the deputy editor. So please follow all that myself and the rest of my staff do at Behind the Steel Curtain, covering all things Steelers for SB Nation. Written work as well at USA Today for Touchdown Wire. Just follow all the written work, man. As well as, by the way, if you're in here and you're not subscribed to the channel yet and you like Steelers content, like NFL content, absolutely leave a subscribe. It would make my little heart grow three sizes too big. Then again, I say this every video. I know it's annoying when other like YouTube people say that in every video. I get it. It annoys me too. But it does help out the channel, and it means a lot to me. So appreciate y'all. And again, if anybody has any Steelers-related question or just NFL draft-related comments or questions, feel free to drop them, man. I'll stay on here for a little bit longer just because we still have a nice chunk of time before the draft itself actually begins. And, yeah, like I said, if you got any questions like that, send them my way. Hold on, reading Twitter just to see if we have any big news taking place. There's a trade made. All right, Matthew. Who's starting at quarterback for the Steelers in 24? I think Russell Wilson starts the season off as the starter. I think Justin Fields ends the season as the starter. Just my guess. And then I think Fields is your starter in 2025. That's just my guess. Sorry, my dad just texted me something funny that I did not expect to see. It's funny. So yeah, if I had to guess, Wilson will start off the season as the starter, and then I think at some point the Steelers are just going to say, "Look, man, if they're like 5-4, even if they're 6-3, because remember last year after the loss to Cleveland, they're 6-4. There was internal conversations about benching Kenny Pickett. They didn't do it. But there was talk about like maybe we should bench Pickett as well as fire Canada because this is going nowhere. I I think that there's a situation where that could happen again. It's a new offense. Things just might not click right away. I think they'll be better, but again, that's a very, very, very low bar. So, if they're not scoring enough, or if the offense just seems out of whack and they're, 6-3, 5-4, something of that nature, I think they're going to have conversations of like, hey, we got 8 games left. We got this kid who's 25, who can run like a gazelle in the Serengeti, who has a musket for an arm and would fit really well on this offense. Let's see what we have here. And if he turns out that he plays really well in the offense, great. Then you have at least at minimum a quarterback for next year that you feel comfortable with, and you go from there. So I think that it just makes sense where they would eventually turn it over to Fields. And I'll say this, and this isn't me like with some sort of information or anything like that. This is just my thoughts. If I had to guess, the Steelers and Tomlin want Fields to win the job. They would love nothing more if Justin Fields goes into camp and preseason and just fucking crushes it. And it's evident that, like, okay, I know that we signed Russ, but we have to start this kid because he's shown us that he's that good. I think that's what the Steelers want to happen, because if the potential long-term answer shows you that he is the long-term answer, then that's great. Nothing against Russell Wilson, but I think that they would much rather Fields show them like, hey, I'm your guy. You can trust me. Let's do this. Hope Fields starts too. Players traditionally like Fields. Players traditionally hate Russ. The traditionally hate Russ thing, I think, is very much far-fetched, because looking at like the Seattle guys, right? I think that's usually who people talk about. I don't know necessarily if the hate is more toward Russ or if it's more towards Pete Carroll wanting Russ to be the hero. Because I think a lot of that stemmed from the loss to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, rather than hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. I think Pete Carroll wanted Russ to get a lot of the admiration there. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of guys like Richard Sherman, Beast Mode, I think Cam Chancellor at one point. I think that there was a lot of just internal stuff there. But, I mean, guys like Cortland Sutton and Russell Wilson have a tremendous relationship. I think that the hatred thing toward Russ is a little bit far-fetched. Denver 2, where Russ had that was weird. I can agree with that. I think that there was just a lack of self-awareness from Russ in a lot of ways. And, look, I think that he wants to make right. And I would like to think that he's a smart enough guy where he can have a little bit of self-reflection, look back on these past 2 years, realize where some things went wrong, and just internally be like, okay, I gotta fix that. I gotta be better. So again, we won't really know until camp starts and these guys are with each other every day again. Which again, I'll be on location in Latrobe throughout training camp, so you can subscribe to the channel to get all the live updates from Latrobe during training camp. That'll be a lot of fun. Written content as well over Behind the Steel Curtain. I'll be doing daily reports from Latrobe. Don't know if I'll be there like every single day, but I'm going to be, for the first week, I'll be there throughout the first week, and then sparingly throughout the rest of camp. But on location reports from Latrobe, and then I'll be coming back here to give you the video reports as well on the channel. So subscribe if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, getting on location reports from Steelers training camp. I'll be doing that here on the channel, as well as written wise over at Behind the Steel Curtain. And again, if you got any comments, questions, anything of that nature, feel free to drop them in the chat before we get on out of here. NFL draft, about an hour and 20 minutes away from starting. We say that now, but we know that it's not going to actually start till like 8:20, because Goodell's going to have like some sort of 15-minute nothing speech. They're going to have the anthem probably for some reason, or like America the Beautiful. Just announce the pick, bruv. Just announce the pick. That's all I need from you. Yeah, all these opening ceremonies and stuff for the NFL draft, I hate. I think it's just so pointless. Just get this thing started. It sounds like a fire truck is going past my apartment. Fields hyper-targeted DJ Moore. Him hyper-targeting Pickens would be nice. We're going to see one. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are going to be allowed to chuck it. That is the best way I can probably put that. That is what the Arthur Smith offense, the passing game, the big part of the passing game is launching it off play action. I did an in-depth report on this for Behind the Steel Curtain, and it took some time. But if you look at the last time that Smith was an offensive coordinator, if you go back to 2019 and 2020, Ryan Tannehill was one of the highest rated passers off play action, had some of the most yards off play action, and not only off play action, but second and short on play action. So the Steelers' game plan is going to be pound the ball early with 2 tight ends on the field, which, by the way, they did almost none of that last year. They were predominantly in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end. Last year, the Falcons on early downs led the NFL in 22 personnel, which is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. The Steelers didn't run 1 play out of 22. They ran very few plays out of 12. So we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. We're going to see a lot of ground and pound early to try to set up a 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2, where they can go, all right, play action to Najee, play action to Jaylen Warren. All right, George, he's down there somewhere. Yeet. Whether that's going to be from Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, they are going to do that. And that's going to be a nice, refreshing look to the offense where we didn't see a ton of that last year. The past 2 years, really since when? Like 2018, before Ben hurt his elbow. We haven't seen a ton of like aerial attacks from the Steelers because by the time like Ben was ready to call it quits, that arm was hanging on by a thread. He was super gluing it onto his body before every game. And we all know the story of Kenny Pickett. He was bad. So really haven't had a consistent downfield passing attack since, 2018 when they went to the AFC title game. No, it was at 2016. 2016 they went to the AFC title game. But even then, like the Killer B era, the final years of Ben, Bell, and Brown were really the last time that we saw them have like a really nice year of downfield passing attack. Like even 2020 when they started off 11-0, it's not like they were killing people downfield. There's the occasional long pass to like Chase Claypool. But for the most part, I mean, it was underneath passing and the defense. So we're going to see a lot more downfield passing this year. And that'll be fun, especially because Pickens, 50-50 balls are basically 75-25 balls with him. So if they give him 5 of those a game, 3 of those a game, and he comes down with like 2 of them, 3 of them, cool. I'll tell you what, his average depth of target this year is going to be like 23 yards. It's going to be absurd. It's just going to be like, all right, George, you know what to do. George Pickens is going to be used for 2 things. Go balls, or I guess really 3 things. Go balls, posts, and slants. That's what he's going to do. He's going to be very much a deep target. If it's a short yardage situation, they'll send him deep, or they'll send him on like an intermediate out or a comeback. Or if they put him in the slot, it's very specifically for run this drag route, run this slant, catch it, and run. Because that's another thing that he's very good at is yards after the catch. So I think it'll be a nice year for George Pickens. But I'm also not going to rule out the possibility. And again, if you see the title of this and you're just joining us, both Todd McShay and Ian Rappaport reporting that the Steelers are one of many teams trying to trade into the top 10. If they do that, my guess is it's for a receiver. Excuse me. I hope to God that if they trade into the top 10, it's not for an offensive lineman because you can just stay put at number 20 and get one. If they trade into the top 10 guys, it's for a receiver. That is my line of thinking. And again, of course, I can't guarantee anything. I'm not in the war room. I don't know. But if I had to guess, if they're trying to move up into the top 10, it's for Rome Odunze, from league neighbors. Or if they can somehow get into the top 5, it's for Marvin Harrison. I think that's the latter of those is very much a pipe dream. I don't think that they're getting into the top 5. But I'm also not completely going to rule it out because if Omar Khan has proven anything, he'll do anything. But it would take a lot to get into the top 5. And if I'm the Cardinals, I already have 6 picks in the top 100. I'm not like enticed too much by, the 20th pick and an additional, 3rd round pick or 2nd round, whatever it would be. So we'll see. And again, if you have any other Steelers-related questions, NFL draft-related questions, NFL-related questions, life-related questions, I'll be here for a little bit longer. We'll say till around like 7, and then go from there. But if you have any more questions, comments that you want to talk about, by all means, drop them in there. And then we'll get conversating. But again, I know I sound like a broken record. But if I had to guess, Odunze is the one that they're seriously targeting. Because again, if you're just joining us, the Bears only have 4 picks in this draft. The Steelers could say, hey, we'll give you pick number 20. We'll give you pick number 119. Give you an additional 4th-round pick to work with to move up to pick number 9 to get Odunze. The Falcons, hey, you guys need an edge rusher. You could still get Latu or Jared Verse maybe at number 20. How about you give us pick number 8 and we'll give you an additional 4th-round pick to do so. I think that those are the 2 biggest ones to watch for. Tennessee at 7 could also be one to watch for because the Titans are probably going to take an offensive lineman, probably going to take an offensive tackle. If they stay put at 7 and Joe Walt's there, that's who they're taking. But if the Steelers call and say, hey, you can still have your selection of tackles at number 20, we'll give you, an additional pick or, a 3rd round or a 4th round pick with like, a 6th or because they have 2 6th-round picks. Why not throw the 6th-round pick in there? So I'll give you, a 1, a 4, and a 6 for your 1 because we want Malik Neighbors or we want Odunze. So we'll see. Beham, hello. Who's the most realistic wide receiver that could complement George Pickens the best? That's a good question. I think Neighbors would be the one that I'd want the most. And again, there's a lot of ifs there because if the Chargers stay put and he's there and Marvin Harrison's not, I think that they'll take him. But Odunze, I think that that's a realistic option, and I think he would complement Pickens well. He's a better natural separator than Pickens is. Now, that's the thing, too, with Pickens, by the way. Like, I love George Pickens, but he's not an X. He's not your predominant number 1. At least he shouldn't be because he's not known for creating separation. He's not known for his route running. He's known for making contested catches and getting yards after the catch, off slants and drags. That's what he does best. And that's okay. That's not me trying to put down George Pickens. But if you can get somebody who is a natural separator, that's why a lot of people were really irritated that they traded Deontay Johnson because he's a damn good route runner and he can create separation. But he wasn't going to be re-signed and reported, issues behind the scenes and whatnot were a factor into that. Whoever you believe, that's up to you. But they weren't going to bring him back, and he was a little bit of a headache, so they moved on from him, whatever. But if you can get somebody like Rome who can win at the line of scrimmage and is a very good route runner to be your, predominant number 1 while Pickens is, or, your 1A while Pickens is your 1B. By the way, Rome can also win downfield and make those contested catches like Pickens can. So I think that Odunze is the best, most realistic target. Obviously, if you can get Marvin Harrison, that's the best. But again, I think that that's somewhat of a fever dream or a pipe dream right now. But I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not gonna rule anything out when it comes to Omar Khan. It's possible. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm probably not doing it because, if I can just get Marvin Harrison, I'm taking Marvin, especially because who the hell's their receivers are? Greg Dortch, I think, is their number 1 receiver. Michael Wilson as well, who had a solid rookie year last year. They don't have a proven guy. Like, Greg Dortch is fine, and Michael Wilson's fine, but, like, I'm sure Kyler Murray would like to have Marvin Harrison. So that's something to pay attention to. But in terms of who I think the best complement would be, Odunze, I think, is the most realistic complement that they have a chance of getting if they trade up to, let's say, number 8 with the Falcons and number 9 with the Bears. I don't know if the Bears are going to keep taking the Steelers' calls, though, because they've already fleeced them twice. And I feel like Ryan Poles probably has any number with a 412 area code blocked. Just my guess. But it's possible, especially if, they say, hey, we'll give you pick number 20, pick number 119, and we'll give you one of our sixths as well, since you only have 4 picks in this draft. Why do you think they cleared cap space? Well, I think for a receiver, and I think that, how do I want to word it? All right, I'll start from the beginning. If they're talking about trading into the top 10, I think that that's always been a plan. It's like, okay, let's try to get into the top 10 and take one of these receivers. But just in case we can't, let's free up this cap space. That way we have $18 million in cap space and can try to pull off a trade for Brandon Ayuk, whose cap hit right now is $14 million. Let's try to pull off a trade for Courtland Sutton, whose cap hit this year is $17 million. But I think Denver would take on a percentage of that. I don't know the ins and outs of his contract by heart, but I think Denver would take a chunk of that. So I think that in a perfect world for the Steelers, they would be able to trade into the top 10 and take Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. But they cleared the cap space to be like, okay, if that doesn't work, then we're going to get back on that Brandon Ayuk train and try to get Brandon Ayuk. Or we're going to, if Brandon Ayuk's gone by then, or if the 49ers won't budge, then okay, we'll call Denver and get Courtland Sutton just to have a reliable, top 2 set of guys with Pickens and Sutton. Or, if you can get Ayuk, that's also a big win. But I think first and foremost, they would like to get one of these star rookies that they don't got to worry about paying for a little bit. I think option 2 was Brandon Ayuk, who, yeah, you got to pay him, but he's also a damn good receiver, and they have the money to do. They have estimated $85 million in cap space next year. They can afford to pay Brandon Ayuk. And then option 3, okay, we couldn't trade into the top 10, didn't end up getting Brandon Ayuk. Let's go get Courtland Sutton, a guy who's been a reliable receiver since he came into the league, has a good relationship already with Russell Wilson. That's a fine consolation prize. So that's why I would bet my life that's why they clear up the cap space, is something pertaining to a receiver. So, but again, in a perfect world for them, they traded to the top 10 and get one of these big name receivers. But it's good to have, as a backup to say, okay, let's clear up this cap space just in case we can't do that. That way we can make a move for an Ayuk, or we can make a move for a Courtland Sutton. So that's why they cleared up the cap space, if I had to guess. Of course, I'm not in there, and I don't know all the ins and outs of their decision-making. But if I had to guess, that's why they're doing it. But I'll take a couple more, guys, about 5 more minutes until I hop off here, and then get ready for the long night that I have ahead of me. It'll be a fun night. Definitely not complaining. I could have a normal human being job, and I'm very grateful to be able to cover the NFL for a living. So, and appreciative of all the new subscribers over the past couple of days. Again, I just started really paying attention to this over the past year. And over the past few months, I've gotten a little bit good at doing it. So I appreciate those who are noticing that and who have subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed already and you love the Steelers, or if you love the NFL and appreciate my content and want to subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. If you don't, I'm not going to beg you for it. Don't worry. If you want to leave a super chat, again, not going to beg you for that either. It's your money. But if you love me enough to actually give me money, that would be just lovely. And I very much appreciate that. B-Ham's back. Let me see. Thank you for answering the cues. Oh, absolutely, man. No, this is, again, I get to write about football and talk on YouTube. That's literally a dream livelihood, man. So appreciate you guys for making that possible. Yesterday, I really had to step back because this is the first draft that I am full-time doing this. So nice little reflection moment for me is this doesn't go unappreciated. It's not numb on me. And I appreciate the fact that you guys support me. It means the world. And yeah, like I said, just figured out how to kind of get YouTube views. So this is pretty cool. And I hope that you guys subscribe, especially if you, like I said, I do the Steelers show at least once a week. So you can tune into Black and Gold Breakdown. That's, the Steelers stream I'll do once a week on here. In season, it'll probably be more than once a week. But for the offseason, I'm keeping it at 1 just because a lot of stuff will get repetitive, especially after the draft between now and training camp. Still figuring out a number. How many would you like in season? Like Steelers fans in season, 2? You think 2 would be all right? 1 after the game, 1 leading up to the game. 2 or 3? I think 3 is the maximum that I would do. I know that Locked On, my buddy Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He does obviously the Daily Steelers podcast, Locked On Steelers. So that's always also a great one to watch. But I think in season, I'll do 2 or 3 a week for Black and Gold Breakdown. I'll do the Pump Fake once a week as well. That's my league-wide coverage podcast. I do that once a week. In season, I do 2 a week. So once we get in season, I'll do this twice a week probably, and then I'll do the Pump Fake twice a week. So that's a total of 4. And then other videos as well that stem from it. If you can't watch the entire podcast, but you want to, see a little bit of, what was talked about, I put out clips from that as well. But there's a one-man operation, guys. But I'm not complaining. Not complaining at all. I appreciate the support. Have fun tonight. Yeah, this is like the big day in the NFL calendar. It's always fun. So have fun. Hopefully the Steelers give us something to cheer about. Hopefully a blockbuster move is made. And we'll see what comes from it. And all the reactions to that will take place. I will do reaction video tomorrow morning because, like I said, I'm going to be writing a bunch of stuff tonight. But tomorrow morning, if you want to tune in, what time are we thinking? 9:30? 9:30 Eastern time? 10 o'clock Eastern time? We can aim for 10. 10 Eastern time tomorrow. I'll give my thoughts on here about the pick. If you want to read about it right away, I'll be writing about it at Behind the Steel Curtain for SB Nation. So you can do that as well and read it. Or if you want to do both, read it and see me talk about it. You can come back to the channel tomorrow and I'll talk about the Steelers' first-round pick. Or if they trade it for somebody. Very much up in the air right now what the hell they're going to do. And it's exciting. It's very exciting. So I appreciate you guys. Again, I'll be on here again tomorrow. We'll say 10 a.m. to talk about what happens in the first round with the Steelers. Enjoy the NFL draft tonight. I'm going to go get some more coffee in me so I can stay awake for all of it. But I appreciate everybody who tuned in, who commented. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I'll see you tomorrow morning to recap what the Steelers do in the first round. We'll talk soon.